Wow.
Welcome, welcome. Look at all these amazing people, Erica.
Wow. Welcome, you guys.
Oh, this is exciting. Welcome to our first ever webinar with IMF. We got a real treat for all of you. Thank you for saying yes and joining us. If you'd be so kind, go to your chat. If you put your name, you can put where you're joining us from. And why not? Tell us your ministry. Put your ministry in there as well. I'm Bill Goodwin. I'm Strategic Partnership Pastor at IMF. And Erica, why don't you introduce yourself? We'll be hosting today, so we're so glad you're with us.
Yes. Hello,
Hi
everybody. My
there.
name is Erica. I am the Director of Marketing and Advancement here at
I don't
IMF.
hear anything.
I'm so excited to see you guys and be able to
Sure.
learn a little bit more about our Digital Basics 101.
Yes, so exciting. If you wouldn't mind, be so kind if you just mute your microphone. We love seeing you, especially as we get started. Once we introduce our presenter, your video on is great, but if your video is off at that point, that's okay too. We understand you might even be possibly multitasking, but it's going to be so engaging and so gripping. So please put your name and where you are joining us from. There's my friend Dan Hall, all the way from Burnsville, Minnesota. And I see you there, Dan. Good to see you. I like the background you have there. And we have Gabriel from New York, Air Force Chaplaincy. Wonderful. Good to have you. Who else are you seeing there in the chat, Erica?
We have Nina from Rosemount, Minnesota, Giving Ministries.
Oh, yes.
We have Katie Rivera, Focus and Vision Ministries in Minnesota.
That's Pastor Michael's wife, Katie.
Yeah.
And who was it from Giving Ministries? Let me find that. That's with Jason. So that's wonderful. We're so glad you're here. I see Rick Cantrell from Hickory Point Church. Welcome, Rick. We're so glad you're with us. And just keep shouting out here, Erica, as we go down the chat. This is so exciting. If you just joined us, put your name in the chat and where you are joining us from, and feel free to put your ministry as well.
Yeah. Hickory Point Church. Welcome, everybody. I think we got quite a few of you coming in, about 10 of them that registered yesterday. They
awesome.
are in Tennessee, and with all the snow coming in, they got all of their employees looking into joining the webinar with us today. We have Emily Dawson from Reformation Church in Florida.
Oh,
Rebecca Albright. Hi, Rebecca. North Carolina, Light Up a Life Ministries.
Hello, Joan from Atlanta, Georgia, and Rick from Clarksville, Tennessee. I see my friend Jeff Hagan. Jeff, I haven't seen you in a while. It's good to see you, even though it's virtual. Good to have you here with us today. Oh, this is so exciting. We're going to get the webinar officially kicked off with our presenter in just a moment. We're so glad to greet all of you. And at IMF, we are all about serving those who serve others in frontline Christian ministry. So we're so glad you're here. We want to keep creating value adds for you as an IMF member. Hello, Carlos. Good to see you, man. I want to be like you. You're outside. We're freezing here in Minnesota. You must be in a warmer climate. That's wonderful. Oh, you're in Cancun, Mexico?
Yes.
Oh,
wow.
You guys need to visit me sometime.
I'm coming your way sometime, I hope. Yes.
Suffering for the Lord.
Yes. Welcome, everyone. We see more have just joined us. I'm Bill Goodwin with Erica, my co-host here. We're so glad that you're on this webinar today. We're going to have a power-packed 1 hour together, and we're going to introduce our guest presenter in just a moment. If you just joined us, put your name and where you're reaching us from in the chat. Craig, welcome from North Carolina. And oh my goodness, so many wonderful people on the call. Put your name and where you're joining us, and also your ministry. And I just want to say this, we are all family at IMF. So there might be some names that you don't know. And feel free to private chat and greet each other, or find each other on LinkedIn or network. I mean, that's also a part of these opportunities. It's a way to connect with others just like you and I that are part of this wonderful IMF family. So wonderful. Linda, welcome, Linda. I haven't seen you in a while either. It's so glad to have you on here. welcome to you. Now, I guess I need to reconnect and find out more about your new ministry that you've been a part of. So that's wonderful. Ken Taylor, welcome to you. David McDonald from Iowa, persistent hope. We need more hope, and we need persistent hope, right, Erica? Anything anyone you seeing in there that we need to greet yet?
Let's see. I think we're getting Carlos from Cancun, Mexico. Who else? We see Craig from Christian Civics Trainings, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Wonderful. Oh, I see Amy. Good to see you, Amy. Glad you're on the screen and waving to us. That's wonderful. And we got a second page here, Erica. I'm going to the second page. I see David McDonald, Roger Kuhn. Hey, Roger was just at our staff meeting. Good to have you with us, Roger. And so many of you, if I missed your name, I apologize, but welcome, Joshua. We're so glad you're here. We're so glad that each and every one of you are part of IMF. And Erica, why don't you mention about questions, how they can put questions, and we'll do that before we introduce our guest.
Yeah, so throughout the next hour here with our time with our guest, feel free to hit the chat function and type in any of the questions that you have around our topics today and digital presence, anything that pops to your mind. Pop it into that chat function there. I am going to be looking at that throughout the time and making note on your questions that you have, and we'll be able to address those with Darren at the end of the webinar.
Absolutely. So as Erica said, we'll take questions in the chat throughout, but we'll actually answer them at the end, because I know you'll have great questions, but you may ask a question and it still may get covered. So we won't pause for questions during the presentation, but we will take and try to field as many of those at the end. Some of you, we may have you at the do the raise hand and have you come on and actually ask your question. So we'll cover those. We'll cover those towards the end of the webinar. So, it's wonderful, this world that we live in, that it is a digital age, and that includes our ministry life. And so that's why we felt it was important at IMF to add value to all of you, our wonderful family members, with a sharing about how to better your web presence, how to better your online presence through social media, your search engine optimization, or SEO, and so many other things. And so we're so glad that you're here. We are recording this, so you will get an email after this with a recording. So if there's anything you wanted to hear again, you'll have that available to you as a resource at the end. And this is a first time ever webinar for us. We hope to do many more. And just to prime the pump, I'm not going to get into it yet, but at the end, we have a special announcement we're going to share with you at the end. So hang on till the end for that special announcement from us here at the IMF office. So without any further ado, let's get right into our topic for today. We're just so excited. So I am pastor of strategic partnerships, working with IMF, and loving the growing partnerships that we are forming with other ministries and other ministry-minded people. And one of those is Darren, who you're going to hear from today. He's from the Twin Cities, north side of the Twin Cities, and he owns and operates a business, a kingdom-minded business called Elevation Team. And Elevation Team with Darren is one of our new strategic partners. And his desire is to add value to our IMF members. Matter of fact, Darren will soon be credentialed with IMF as well, so he'll be a part of the family. But Elevation Team is a new strategic partner. And so I'm going to turn it back to my co-host, Erica, and have her officially introduce our speaker and have you, do the applause and welcome him.
Yeah, so we're bringing on Darren Johnson from Elevation Team, and it's been such an honor to have conversations with him leading up to making this webinar possible. The greatest thing that I love about Darren is he's just got a heart after Jesus and a heart after those who are serving others and reaching people for Christ. And what's just truly amazing is that, like Bill mentioned, we live in a digital age, and it's our ministries they grow so much when we have an online presence. So I'm just so excited to be able to bring him on for you guys. And I'll turn it over to Darren.
Hey guys, so happy to be here. Hello everyone. I know that I can't hear everyone responding, and that's okay, but so excited to be here. I know that these questions that I feel like it's on every ministry's mind of like, how do we get out there? How can people find us? How can we get in front of the right people? How do all these things work on the digital side of the landscape? So before we get started, I'm just going to pray really quick, and then we'll jump right in. Hey, dear God, we just come before you today. Wherever these people are at, I just pray that the Holy Spirit is resting in these rooms across America, or even in Mexico, or different places, wherever they're at. I pray that the Holy Spirit just enters their space that they're in. I pray that they hear from your Holy Spirit in just new and exciting ways. I pray that when we're all getting in the Word, dear God, that word would just be like jumping right off of the pages and right onto our hearts, dear God. I pray that whatever ministries we're all involved with, or churches we're involved with, dear God, I just pray in advance for the planting of seeds of people that are hungry for more of Jesus in their lives surrounding these ministries that we're talking with today. I pray for provision for all these ministries and churches that we're talking with today. Dear God, you tell us that you have access to all of the cattle on all the hills and all of the lands. And so I just pray that these ministries would be provided for, whether that's financially or human resources or people's time or whatever that looks like, dear God. I just pray that you would just be bringing provision, dear God. We need more of your light and love out into the world. And so I just pray that through our talk today, dear God, that you would just give us new ideas and new creativity, wisdom and discernment, so that we can go out and be the sharpest tools that we can possibly be in your hands, Lord, as we go out into the world to try and spread your light and love. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
So look, I'm not going to bore everybody with, a long history of myself, but we'll just say that I have about 10 years of corporate marketing experience before God called me out of that. I went on a mission trip to Haiti, and it just wrecked me for corporate America, you guys, for the rest of my life, because just seeing what a lot of the world lives like totally changed my perspective. And so about a decade ago, a little over a decade ago, God called me out of that corporate marketplace and into working specifically with ministries to help them reach more people for Jesus and to help draw those folks in, but using the same tools in the toolbox that all of these big businesses use. And so that's what we're here to talk about today, is kind of like, where do you start? Where does it all begin? And what should we be doing as ministries and churches to draw folks in? And so we're going to talk about some things that hopefully some people on your team or you yourself can be doing. And there's going to be some other things that we talk about that you might not know how to do yet. And so today is the day to kind of learn about those just a little bit, to give you a taste of some of those things. And then we can decide where to go next, on whether it's, hey, I need to go through some online courses myself, or maybe it's hiring a team like ours, or maybe it's having an intern who's still in college, who's under the age of 40, so they know how to do some things that you don't. Whatever that landscape looks like, we're all in different places in our ministries. And so just really excited to go through kind of what some of these tools in the toolbox look like today. So as we're thinking about these things, I feel like it's like, where do we start? What does that landscape look like? What are all the tools that are in the toolbox? And so, I know that as we're thinking about this, what is it that drives us? It likely is, in some form or fashion, reaching more people for Jesus, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be in the roles that we're in. And so how do we get in front of these busy people, on these devices that everybody has in front of them or in their pocket most often, most times throughout the day, or other devices? Like, what does that look like? And is there a way that when they're looking for us, we can be found? Because that is kind of one core audience of what I would describe as more of a pull approach, right? Someone's looking for something that your ministry offers or your church offers. How do we draw them in? And then there's a push approach, right? Of like, hey, we think we can identify who it is that needs us or who we'd like to engage with. How do we push ourselves out in front of them in hopes that they will then take the next step to engage with us? So those are kind of the two core areas that we're going to talk about today. But as you know, I feel like we're called to be the light of the world, right? And it shouldn't be hidden. And I believe that likely all the ministries and churches that we're a part of, hopefully have that mindset of the Great Commission of going to make disciples of all nations, and that it shouldn't be hidden. And so I believe that this tool is one of the best tools that we have access to today. I love in the Bible how God uses unlikely people and unlikely stories to make a huge impact, right? We have David and Goliath. Well, what did he have in his hand? It was a small boy going against a giant, and he had a slingshot in his hand, right? We have Moses, who had the staff, that was used. And I believe that this is one of the most underutilized tools of ministries and churches today. If you don't have a digital marketing actual strategy on how to get in front of people on this device, I'm telling you right now, you're not just not keeping up with today, you're not keeping up with something that should have been started probably a number of years ago. It needs to be a part of ministry today to use the tools that are available to us, because I can tell you right now, the enemy is using this tool for a bunch of content that is not kingdom minded, that is not based on God. And I believe that we are all called to do our best to use the tools that are at our fingertips to shine that light out into the world. So I'm really excited to be talking about the same types of tools that big businesses use. So these are some of the things that we're talking about, like how do we show up on search engines? What's going on with our website and how do we optimize it? How much should we be paying attention to feedback and things like that people leave on our website or on our Google My Business? How do we look at analysis and analytics? How are we looking at that data and tracking people if they're coming to our website or if they're looking at our social media? How are we engaging with them and really looking at that data and then adapting what we're doing based on what people are doing? So these are a lot of different things that, most ministries, especially if we're smaller, it can be hard to do all of these things on our own, and it can be hard to learn all of them on our own. And so that's why I mentioned earlier, I feel like after this Zoom, hopefully we'll all kind of walk away with maybe some next steps and ideas on what we can go to next. So when we're thinking about all the different tools that are out there, one of the big pieces I wanted to talk about is Google My Ministry. I changed it from Google My Business. That's the actual tool in the toolbox. So if you want to make a note of that, for those of you that are note takers, looking up Google My Business Basics. So this is the strategy of making sure that you have a Google listing out there. So I'm in this sweet spot, I feel like, age category wise. I see a lot of different ages on our call today. So I'm 42. So I used a phone that had the long cord in the kitchen. You guys remember that, where you could walk to the living room while you're on the phone? When I went to my grandparents' house, they had the rotary phone, right? Where you dial it around. I grew up in that environment, but then I also, when I was in elementary school, I got to use my, a computer for the first time. So I'm not one of those people that only knows digital. I remember the analog days. And so when we think of Google My Business and making sure that we have a listing there, this is back in the day when you would say, if you're not in the yellow pages, you might not be a legit organization, right? That was the thing. You had to be in the yellow pages. One of my first jobs was using my parents' station wagon to deliver yellow page phone books all across the Twin Cities metro. You got paid per book. And so I remember driving away from the facility, and the back end of the station wagon was this far off the tire because I had thousands of pounds of books in there. But anyway, so it's been interesting to watch the transition of what makes a credible ministry, what makes a credible church. And it's transitioned from, if you're not in the yellow pages, you might not be legitimate, to if you don't have a website, you might not be a legitimate ministry or a church, to now, not only do you have to have a website, but you have to have some sort of social media presence. And so thinking through managing these things, Google My Business, or Google My Ministry, as we put it here, is one of those first things, meaning that if someone is doing a Google search in your area, we want to make sure that you're showing up on Google My Business, right? So it helps with, if you have a website that's maybe not as mobile friendly yet, if you haven't made that transition to have it be super mobile forward, obviously it works on all devices. It gets you on the map, and that's not important for every ministry or it's not that important for every ministry necessarily to have people to get directions to you if you're not providing active services. But it is important if you're trying to show up to the local community to have that set up on Google Places, which Google My Business will help you do. Whether or not we want to accept reviews or not, sometimes those are beneficial, sometimes they're not. So that can be something that, as an organization, you decide how long or how important that is to you to have reviews be available, but it does help you stand out on Google. So when someone does that search for some service that you provide or something along those lines, making sure that it's accurate information that's showing up so that your hours are correct, your location is correct, your website is correct on there. And we've all seen these, right? This is when you do a Google for restaurant or something like that, and right on your phone, right below the listing, it says call, website, or directions, right? It's like 3 calls to action right there. So especially if you are a church, or if you're trying to, or if you have an organization that provides actual services, having someone manage your Google My Business is super important. It's not enough to just set it up. It needs to be all the time be managed. And there are ways that within Google My Business, you can actually create content similar to like a social media platform, where you're posting things on Google My Business that are about your ministry or about your church. So this would be like one of the first things I would recommend doing if you're looking to expand your digital presence is, how can I make sure that we're set up correctly on Google My Business, and making sure that all of those things are set up. So as we kind of go into the next area here, I always like to think about, kind of the 2 main things that I mentioned earlier, the 2 main approaches, whether it's the push approach, and how do we push ourselves out in front of people, or how do we draw people in? So we're going to spend a couple of minutes kind of talking about those 2 avenues and what that looks like. So when we're thinking on the search side, most people are familiar with, a search engine like Google or Yahoo or Bing. I don't expect you to be able to read all the content that's on here. Rick, I saw you put your readers on. I hear you, man. My eyes are doing the same thing. Don't worry, we won't stay on the small font too long. So when we're thinking through that, there are some key areas that we like to think about. So on the search engine side, you have paid search, and then you have organic search results. And so when we think about, well, Darren, what are you talking about? What's the difference? So when you see this word sponsored right here, or sometimes it'll say ad next to it, that is a paid search result. So someone paid to show up as Grace Fellowship in this first spot, so that if someone does a Google search, it's churches near me in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the zip code that I'm in, that's something that they wanted to target. So the 2 things that matter to search engines, you guys, are number 1, what are the search terms that we want to show up for? So what does that look like? So someone in your organization or your church should be thinking about making a list. And this can be a great team building exercise too, because it can really get some good thought processes going if you get the 3 to 7 top people in leadership or stakeholders, or they could be engaged volunteers, it could be board members, depending on how you're set up. But getting people in the room, start a whiteboard session. Say, who do we think we're trying to reach? What would we want to show up for on Google? What types of services is it that we're providing that would line up with the things that we think we want to show up for? So starting that conversation is really important, to think through, what is it that we want to show up for? The 2 things that matter to search engines are, what did they type in, and where are you? So geographic location wise, if someone types in churches near me in Phoenix, I don't need my church in Minneapolis to show up. And so I would never want to pay to show up just across the country if someone types in churches near me, right? But if you run a ministry, like maybe we'll say, I don't know, a ministry that helps people get certified to be ministers or chaplains. I don't know if you guys know a leadership group like that, but maybe across the country, if someone typed in, how can I become a chaplain, or how can I get certified to be a minister? How can I be ordained? We would want to show up as IMF, right? We would want to show up right here in this first number 1 spot that says IMF, with a 5-star Google rating, and then a link to our website right here, right? So we want to make sure that we're showing up for the things that matter. And so when we think through that search engine strategy, that paid search area is an area that a lot of ministries think about, but they don't know how to utilize it. So how do I show up and pay to show up at one of those number 1 spots? The benefit that there is, which some of you might be familiar with this program, but there's a program through Google actually, where you can have a grant program that will pay to let you pay in Google dollars to show up at some of those first spots. So the great part about this program, as long as you are your own 501c3, so this is not when you're covered underneath maybe an organization, but it could be if you have your own chapter even, that you could utilize this program. But most of the time you need some sort of documentation showing that you have 501c3 status. And if you have that, you can utilize up to $120,000 per year in ads at no cost to you. So to say that again, just in case someone was looking down or not paying attention, up to $120,000. Bill, did you need something? I saw you pointing. Okay. So it's a big chunk of change, you guys. And so you might be asking yourself, well, what's the benefit to Google? Why would they do this for 501c3s? The answer is that their revenue is too big and they're looking for giant tax write-offs. So literally what they do is they allow us to utilize these ads in this top spot on search engines right here at no cost to you. The only catch, there's one catch, is you have to be a 501c3, and there's a couple stipulations, like as an example, you can't be a school that charges money to come there, things of that nature, because they want to make sure you're not actually set up more like a business. But for most 501c3s, you're going to be able to utilize the program. The second catch is that the cost to show up here per click has a cap. It can't be over $2 per click. And most of you, I'm sure, might be wondering, if you haven't used this type of platform before, is like, well, how do they decide what the cost per click is? And it goes way back to when we were all in 7th grade and we learned our first things about economics, right? It's supply versus demand. So the supply is how many people out there are searching for what you have, right? What services are you providing? What type of organization are you? That type of thing. The demand is set by how many other organizations want to pay for that supply. That's where the competition factor comes in. So I'll give you an example. If you're trying to target folks for local realtor or a general contractor near me, your cost per click is going to be like $15 to $30 just to get someone to click and go to your website, right? Because the competition is very high, the demand is very high for that supply. The benefit that most ministries like all of you probably have is that a lot of the things that you offer for services and things of that nature are pretty well defined and very specific, which means that there's not a lot of organizations that are paying for that search term in your area. And again, those are the two things that matter. What are the search terms we want to show up for, and where are we located? So when we're thinking through that, what that means to us is that for most of you, those search terms that we come up with and in your geographic area are probably going to fall under that cap where you're going to be able to utilize the grant program for a lot of those search terms and get your ads for free. Okay, so the two things that we're thinking about are, what is the paid search strategy that we have, and what is the organic search strategy? Now, the better that we do on both of these things, the more qualified the people are, the traffic that arrives at our website will be, and the more qualified they are. And when I say qualified, it means the better that we're aligning ourselves with our content on our website with what they typed in the search bar means that it's going to be qualified traffic. So what that means is, like, you shouldn't pay to show up for just some topic that's trending right now. People are all, it's the buzz, right? And so we're paying for that traffic. But then when they get to your website, it doesn't say anything about those buzzwords, if that makes sense. So we want to make sure that our website and our content aligns with that search term list that you and your group came up with. That should be talked about on your website, because search engines won't allow you to just pay to show up here in this first spot and try and get people to use clickbait to get to your website, and then your website doesn't talk at all about it. So when we think through this organic strategy of how do we want to show up organically down here, like River Valley Church and 3 Degrees Church, that's search engine optimization up here on the graph, you guys. So when we think through, like, where do people click, roughly 1 out of 2 people, or their eyes psychology wise, are drawn to the organic search results that are here and then down below. Roughly 30%, this blue area, are going to find you through targeting, which we'll talk about next. And roughly 1 out of 5 people are going to find you through the paid search results, or pay per click, PPC, that shows up here. So in a well thought out strategy for your ministry, we want to show up to the blue people, the green people, and the orange people, right? We want to show up in all of those areas so that no matter what type of person I am, if I did a search or I'm looking for something that has to do with you and your ministry, I'm going to see that, oh, they're listed organically down here and they have that first spot in paid search, they're probably a credible ministry. I should click on one of these and check them out, right? So we want to make sure that we have a strategy that thinks through all of these things when it comes to drawing folks in. And again, the paid search strategy, I would look at that as, that's more like a sprint, right? Like, once we hit the metaphorical green button of those ads showing up on search engines, it's going right now. We're drawing in that traffic. I look at organic strategy. That's more like a relay race, right? There's more legs to a relay. You're passing off the baton. It takes a longer amount of time. You're usually doing a lot of work on your website, making sure that the content aligns with those search terms that we want to show up with. So it does both of the strategies, whether it's paid or organic. They tie in with your website because we want to make sure that it's qualified people that are getting there. And the only way we do that is by managing our content effectively. So this is all talking more about the pull approach, right? Of drawing folks in and what that looks like and how do we draw them in when they're looking for us. So this next area that we're going to talk about is more of a push strategy. So how do we get in front of people that we think need what we have, but they haven't done a search yet maybe? And this area to me is, I find it more exciting. I love the push it approach of how do we get in front of people and thinking through all of those things. I think it's super fun to try and think through all the people groups, who are we reaching, those types of things. So we're going to talk about the push strategy next, right after we finish up talking about organic strategy here. So when we're thinking about search engine optimization, these are some things that you should be looking at on your website as far as managing your content. So are your URLs, easy to remember? Or is your website, does it have things like, it says yourministry.org and then / a bunch of code for the pages? That makes it harder for search engines to find. So we want to make sure that it's like yourministry.org / food relief, if you're providing food relief in your area, things like that. So we want to make sure that your URL structures are well defined. You have good heading tags. Of course, we want the content that the user reads on your website to line up with, again, those search terms. Doing that keyword research and traffic monitoring. So that's where we start to look at, what are people actually doing when they get to your website? Do you even know? If we have 1,000 people that come to our website, do you even know that number? And if there is 1,000 people that come to our website, do we know where they're clicking? So when we think through that strategy of, we spent all this time as a group, looking at our search terms and defining who we want to show up to. And then we had our web developer, through that keyword research, we asked them to look and say, hey, we came up with 100 words. Can you do some research and tell us how many people even search for those words? Is there any traffic out there that we can try and draw in? And then we paid them to do design work on our website, our content, and put all of that on there. Why would we invest all of that time and money, you guys, if we weren't going to then monitor what happened when they got there? So we have to be monitoring our traffic and doing analytics and competitive analysis to look at what are the other ministries or groups that are out there that are serving the same people that we want to show up to, what's working for them, what's not working for them. Usually you can find both online, right? Of like, I really like their website, or I really don't like how their website feels. We've all had those experiences. Or we're doing this. How many people have had to do this? You can't see, I'm expanding because I can't read it, right? And we don't all have readers like Rick that we can put on. And so sometimes, we might be sitting there looking at a website and it's not very mobile friendly. And I don't know about you, but if I spend more than a couple seconds on a site that's not working for me in that way, I'm gone. I'm already moving on to the next one. So making sure that we're thinking about, what are we putting on our website? Who's managing that content? Is it lining up with what people are looking for? And then also importantly, what are they doing when they get there? If people are looking at your services part of your website and they're spending some time poking around at your different services, and then maybe I'm looking at like the About Us page because I'm trying to learn about you, and then I click on your support page, but we start to notice that 75% of people that end up at your support or donate page are exiting your site. It's what we call a bounce. If they're bouncing right away out of your website, there's a problem on your support page. So someone needs to be monitoring, what is this tool that we've invested in, meaning our website? Is it doing what we need it to do? And if not, then what are those changes that need to happen? And so some of this stuff can be managed by your current web admin. Just so you guys understand, I'm not saying we have to like recode your whole website. You could be having a website that's on Squarespace or Wix or some other super user-friendly, do-it-yourself type of thing, and still you can put analytics on your website and start to look at these things, look at the trends, and then make changes appropriately. And those are things that you can do at a very low cost, and sometimes even free. If you're the one managing your own website, it's just your time, right? It's investing the time in it to learn a little bit about it. And there are courses, you guys, that are free for analytics. There's courses that are free for search engine optimization. I'm not suggesting that all 30 some odd people that are on this call, go out and get certified in all these things. If that's not a passion of yours, I understand. That's why there's people like us and our team to help you too. But I'm just pointing out, if you do have the time and that is the position that you're in, there are resources out there that are free that can help walk you through a lot of this stuff. You can even get certified by companies like Google on your own. We have those certifications, and that's why we're here. I always give the analogy, like, I can replace an alternator in my truck. It's going to take me all day on Saturday. I might cut open one of my knuckles. And somehow, you guys, I'm always ending up, does this happen to anybody else where, like, you're holding a screw in your hand, but, like, the project is done and you're like, is it worth going back and taking it all apart to find where that one screw goes, or do I go turn the key in my truck, right? So you have the option to do it on your own. You might be left holding that screw in your hand and you just pray that you start your car and it runs right. Or you can pay a mechanic who's an expert in this. They're going to have it back to you in 2 hours. Your car's going to run right, and you have a warranty hopefully or something like that. So that's the analogy I've come up with. You guys can let me know in the comments if you think of a better one. But my point is, you can do it yourself or you can pay a professional. And then this just talks about here on this other graph that Google is definitely the big kid on the playground when it comes to traffic. So any strategy that you do that is organic in nature, meaning showing up in that area, that organic area on a search results page, you guys, any work that you do on your website to show up there is going to work on any search engine, because they all have different ways that their algorithms work. But at the core, the two things that matter, you guys all hopefully remember, are what did they type into the search bar and where are you? That's the same across any search engine. So SEO driven or organic strategy is going to work across all websites. But when it comes to paid strategy, we personally, most of the time, mostly use Google, just because that's where most traffic is. But if you have defined audiences that we determine spend time on other search engines, then we might explore those too. So now we'll jump into more of the targeting side. This is more on the push side. So how do we get in front of folks that we think need what we have, but they're not searching for it yet? So when we think through this side, I always am a huge fan of looking at research. I'm an analytics geek, you guys. I love math. I love algebraic equations and calculus and all those types of things. It's the way that I see projects, which works really well for most boards because they love numbers and reporting. So when we think through, how do we get in front of these people? It all starts with research, right? So it's, who are our audiences? Do you know who they are? Have you had that same type of discussion that I mentioned about how would we show up on search engines? You should be having that same conversation about the push approach or the targeting approach by defining your audiences. So after you've done your whiteboard session, looking at all the search terms you want to show up for, hopefully that can lead, maybe you take a coffee break and then jump right back into it, erase the whiteboard, and then start talking about the people groups that you were just talking about. Who would search for those things? Are they women? Are they men? Are they married? Are they unmarried? Do they lean politically conservative? Are they more liberal? Do they have children? Do they not have children? What is their income range? How close do they live to us? Are they far away? All of these types of things are things that you should be discussing. So identifying those people groups and then thinking through, how do we show up to them? So it all starts with research and then starting your targeting process. The more targeted the audience is, meaning the more well aligned they are with your audiences being aligned with the content that you're showing those audiences, the more aligned those two things are, the higher rate of conversion we're going to have as far as them doing the call to action that you would like them to do when they get to wherever you brought them. That sentence sounded really interesting, but hopefully it all made sense to you. So we want to be then adapting those plans, and then again, lead tracking and conversion. So this goes back to that analytics I was just talking about. Why would you invest in showing up to all these people and drawing them into a place that you're trying to draw them into if we're not going to look at the analytics? So we want to be looking at, hey, we showed them this piece of content, we drove them to this part of our website, we asked them to, we'll just say donate. We asked them to donate, and some people did. We had 12% that did. We had another 30% that started filling out our donate form, but then they exited the website. And then we had another, what would that be? Another 68% of people that just came to the donate page and then they went somewhere else. So we want to be looking at these traffic numbers, you guys, and thinking about who are the people that did those three different things, what are the percentages, and how do we increase whichever one we need to increase, and how do we decrease the area that we need to decrease, which normally would be like the bounce rate. So when we think through aligning those audience types, you know, I always start with who's your main audience. So who's the main group of people you're trying to serve or draw in? Who's that secondary audience? And then how many more audiences do you have? Right? Because for some ministries or organizations, you might only have 2, you might have 3. For some, we might have like 11, you know, because we might get into, well, you know, we have an audience of families, you know, that we want to draw into our church. You know, I was talking with a church a couple days ago. They said, obviously, they want to target, you know, young families, people with young children is like at the center of their target of who they're trying to draw in. But then we started talking about, but you have all these other programs that are geared towards like teenagers and things like that. Like how many people are in your teenage youth group right now? How many people are in your middle school youth group right now? We started finding out that they are accomplishing some of their goals with that young family dynamic and model, but they also discovered that there's a lack of people that are in those other categories from a children's ministry wise, which means what if we started to target parents that have people that have kids that are in that age group? Because I don't have teenagers yet. I have 4 kids under 9, but I can only imagine what it's going to be like when I have multiple teenagers in the house. I know that I'm going to need some help, guys. I'm going to need God in my life. I'm going to need Jesus, and they're going to need Jesus. And so thinking through those types of things of like, it can really create some good conversations if you do this whiteboard idea, or, you know, it could be virtual or in person, where you're talking about who are the people that we're serving right now, and who is it that we're trying to draw in? Because sometimes those are also 2 different groups of like, yeah, we're doing a great job reaching this people group and drawing them in, but really we want to focus, or we just launched a program that serves this whole other people group and we've never tried to draw them in before. So when we're thinking through like all these different media types and things like that, you know, this is an example of some audio visual ads and things like that that would be done on like iHeartMedia radio stations. So thinking through all those interests, their income levels, and then doing A/B testing of that media based on success and conversion. And so when we think about those things, whether it's on a platform like iHeartMedia or on social media, I love the reporting of it all, that we can start to look at like, okay, you know, we are starting to draw people in this state or this zip code or this county or the whole world. Are they men? Are they women? What is their age range? All of these types of things through these types of graphs can be reported on. And so thinking through, once we've defined those people groups, your different audience types, how are we getting out in front of them and creating content that speaks to those people groups we just decided we wanted to reach? What this means, you guys, is that you can't just have one piece of content that you post on Facebook and Instagram and X, formerly Twitter, and the list goes on of all the platforms you can post it on. You can't just post one piece of content and think it's going to do well with all people groups. Okay, if you have 3 or 4 or 5 different audiences that we've decided over here that need to be reached, then you need to be thinking about, we need to have content throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year, initiatives that speak to those different people groups, and they should be different. Okay, then it shouldn't all just be one type of content. And the second thing that we need to talk about when we talk about targeting is that it costs money, you guys. It's not free. So I'm not talking about just putting a piece of content out on social media. How many of us out there, I would love, I can't see all the chats right now because the way that I have all these screens set up, but if you guys want to drop in the chat right now, how many people use social media for their ministry and
Hello.
have been disappointed?
Yes, but my wife, Deidre Jackson. Thanks.
How many people have used social media and been disappointed when they see how many people have interacted with your social media? Just drop it in the comments if your answer is yes or no. I'm going to go ahead and prophesy right now. In Jesus' name, I bet you everybody says that they're disappointed. Okay. And the reason why is because it is so difficult to get people to see our stuff, you guys. Oh my gosh. I've been doing this a long time. So when I started our organization, it was just 2 short years after Facebook ads became a thing. So I've been doing this, since the beginning. It used to be that if the way the algorithm was set up was that if you posted something on Facebook, when I follow your page, at some point in my feed, your content is there. I can get to it. I might have to scroll down, but it always brought me back to the most recent thing I saw, and then I could scroll down to see the latest updates, right? It doesn't work that way anymore. On average, and you guys can Google this on your own after we're done on this Zoom, but statistically, if you post something and you just leave it, you don't pay for anyone to see it, most of your content's going to be seen by, on average, 5 to 10% of your total audience. Meaning if you have 1,000 fans, we're talking about 50 people seeing your stuff, okay? Organically. So when I talk about targeting, this is the art form of looking at all of the different demographic information. What age are they? What income range are they? Are they married? Are they not? All the things I'm rattling off and more. And then handpicking that audience and then paying to push that content out in front of them with a call to action to then have them come back somewhere and do something for me. So I'm targeting people that are in a specific income range, that are conservatively political, that have money and capacity to give. I want them to be parents or grandparents, and I want them to live within 20 minutes of this women's center, we'll say, that support a pro-life organization that helps women who are unexpectedly pregnant. And I'm going to show them this very moving image of a woman holding a baby alone, right? No dad in the picture, and say, did you know you can support life right in your own area? Click here to learn how. And then they click that information. It brings them to a video that's on the website sharing a testimonial of this woman who was unexpectedly pregnant. She was going to have an abortion, et cetera, et cetera. And then the call to action there is I want them to give me their contact information, their email and phone number, and then I want them to donate, right? So thinking through who are these audience groups, and then you have to select them and pay to show up in that area. So the targeting is probably one of the most effective areas that we can all grow in this digital landscape of trying to bring Jesus and bring light and paying to show up in people's feed on this device, because we all know that businesses and non-kingdom minded content, they are paying to show up in front of our eyeballs. So we need to take some of that ground back, and that's what targeting is set up for. And so some of you might be saying, well, I don't know how to do all that research. I don't know how to do all these things. This is, again, where there's the mechanic option, okay? There's 2 options. You can do it yourself. If you've been on Facebook and you have a business page, you can go on there and pick any post you want. There should be a blue button next to it that says boost. It's already set up with predetermined settings that may or may not be effective for you. I'm going to go with could be more effective than doing nothing, but less effective than having an expert do it, right? So it's better than nothing. So I would suggest, if you have a small budget and you can't afford to hire anybody else to help you and do all of the research and have that expertise, start going into your posts, start playing around with audiences, throw $10 at it, see what happens. I mean, I guarantee you, if you put $10, more people are going to see it than if we did nothing, right? And it will tell you right on there, as you select $10, it will say, we think this many people might see it. It's going to even give you an estimate. So it's pretty user friendly. But again, it's that mechanic approach on whether you want to do it yourself or have an expert do it. So when we think through targeting, that is definitely a big area that I would encourage everyone to start looking at. So as we think through all these things, at the heart of the matter is, what would it mean if we reach more people for Jesus? Could we have more people engage with our ministries? And then what would it mean to the world or our local community or both if we did these things? So as we think through those next steps, I'm going to drink some water because I've been talking a lot. I'm going to unmute Bill and Erica. Oh, Bill already unmuted himself. Erica, I'll unmute you too. And if there's any people that have questions, I know I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I apologize. I meant to give 10 minutes. I only left 9 for questions. I also have more time. So if we want to stay on for a few minutes after, I'm good with that too, you guys. But I'll let our facilitators talk about what those questions could look like, and that you guys can rattle them off. I'm super excited you're all here. at the heart of all this, you guys, it is about reaching more people for Jesus. And I'll say it again, and I'm okay if I sound like a broken record, but this is one of the most largely impacting tools that has been given to humanity to reach people for Jesus in our lifetime and possibly ever. And so I would just encourage you to invest some of your own time if it involves self-education, or invest real resources into hiring whatever that looks like. It's worth some investment, even if it's just your time to learn a little bit more about it and do some of these things you can do yourself. That's still an investment of your time. I highly recommend it. You will not be disappointed if you invest in digital strategy on how many more people you can reach for Jesus. And that's what we're all here for.
Absolutely. Darren, that was amazing. I agree with Mary who said that hour went fast. Good information. If you found value in what Darren shared, go ahead and put yes in the chat. We'd love to hear from you that you found value in this. I'm a little overwhelmed. How about you, Erica? Because I feel like, yes, I want to learn all this, and it's like going so fast. How do I grasp it all and then apply it, right? We can hear information, but we want to apply it. And I'm excitedly overwhelmed. How about you, Erica?
Yeah, oh my gosh, there's just so much that we unpacked within the hour. And like Darren mentioned, this is stuff that can be DIY, do it yourself, and dive in and start learning how to build up these target audiences and doing these paid searches, as well as going around for reaching out to the professionals. There's just so much that I'm learning too, being in marketing, and I'm so grateful to see so many other people in different ministries trying to grasp all of this really important information. And it's always an ongoing learning process. Technology is advancing by the minute, by the second. So there's always opportunities to grow. I want to dive into some of these questions here that we have.
Erica, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Let me share, make sure that we put in the chat Darren's email and also his website for Elevation Team, which is elevationteam.org. And as Erica said, we're going to have her start reading off some of the questions. We want to be respectful of your time. So if you do need to hop off, we just want you to get this information before you hop off. Hopefully you can stay through the questions, because I'm sure there'll be some great, clarifying or things that will come out of the questions. And before we go to those questions, let me give you this announcement that we have. I mentioned at the top, because again, if some of you have to hop off, I want you to hear this announcement. Darren has agreed to come back and do part 2, another webinar. We are so excited about it because, as was said, this is a lot of information to cover. And so in just a short time, you're the first to hear about it. You're the first to hear about it on this webinar on Tuesday, February 6th, from 1 to 2 p.m. Central Time. We're going to do a part 2 of the Digital Basics 101, and a portion of that will be about how to reach people during Easter, because that is a huge time. Obviously, Christmas and Easter are great times to leverage your digital platforms for connecting with people. So mark your calendars for Tuesday, February 6th, 1 to 2 o'clock. Erica will be sending stuff out about that, and that is Central Time. That's our announcement, and we'd love to get to your questions, and hopefully you can stay till the end. If you have to pop off, we just want to say once again, thank you for joining us, and we will send this in a link to your email because you signed up. So, okay, Erica, I covered all the announcements. I'm excited to get to the questions. What do we got here?
Yeah, that's so good. So our first one we're looking at, when we go back to talking about Google Business and Googling My Ministry. We have, how do I set up our Google My Business, and how do we update it?
Yeah, so if you just simply go on Google My Business setup, you just Google it. It'll bring you right there, and it will show. I would start even before that and do a search for your ministry or your church, right? Because I think that a lot of times we might not even know that there's already a Google My Business listing set up, and so then it's a matter of claiming it. So right below, if you do that search for elevationteam.org or something, and you find your listing, right, and you go into the Google My Business area. Right below it, it'll say, "This is my business. Claim my business," and then it'll walk you right through the steps. It's very easy. It depends on how it's currently set up. Sometimes they'll need to mail you a postcard to the physical address that's listed to make sure, like, hey, the person who logged in digitally is actually at the physical place, right? Sometimes it's via phone call where the Google system will call the phone number that's already listed. But it's very easy to set up on your own, or if there's a listing that's already there, it's also fairly easy to claim your business. So yeah, that's a good question.
Good. Okay, and then this one's a little bit more specific. It's referring back to the push approach.
Yeah.
And from Joshua, he said he launched a Substack blog called the Diverse Lenses a couple weeks ago. He's wondering if that would be considered a push approach.
I don't know. I actually don't know what Substack is. So if it's just a normal blog that lives on your website,
It's
then
like
I
a
would say
blog, Darren. It's like a blog, WordPress, and they have a lot of easy features so that you can just push it out and buttons and subscribers.
sure. So yeah, depending on if it's just showing up there, but there's no active putting it out in front of somebody, right? Like in their
Well, you
feed.
can push out the link to LinkedIn and
Oh, sure.
Facebook and Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah, so then I would say that would be kind of a push approach. Yeah, if you're starting to put it out in front of people. Absolutely.
Good. And then we have Carlos from Mexico wondering if we have any suggestions for his retreat center in Mexico on promoting rest.
Oh my gosh. Well,
I think I have an answer, Darren. I think I need to come down and check it out, and then once I experience it, I'll help him get the word out. How about that?
okay, we're gonna mute Bill for all vacation related questions because I would like dibs on coming down there. Maybe we can go together, Bill. I would say, yeah, I mean, I would absolutely be looking at different ways to push that out in front of people because, I mean, everybody is looking for ways to recharge, to reset, and to rest. So, I mean, I don't think you're gonna have a problem with people being interested in that once you determine how you can push that out in front of people, right? On the search engine side or the organic side, that's again where making sure that your website has all the search terms that are talking about rest, recharging, how do I get a reset, all those types of things. I would probably look into having some blog related content so that you can have a wealth of content that's out there about those subjects that you want to show up for, and then combine that with a push approach of, pushing yourself out in front of people with certain, if there's a cost to your center, which I would imagine there is, within certain income ranges and things like that too, so that you'd be able to see some real conversion fruit, I guess, or ROI. But yeah, depending on where you're at in Mexico, my wife and I might be wanting to come down there and check that out as well. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we have from Linda. This is a good one. I think this will resonate with a lot of our IMF members here. She's asking, is the Google Analytics or website analytics on our website, or is there some app or program or tool that we need to purchase?
That's a great question.
She says a person over 50 asking, wink, wink.
Sure. Well, hey, Linda. Yeah, great question. Most website platforms are going to have some sort of analytics that are built in where you'll be able to look at the traffic. But also most of those pre-built in APIs or software components that are built into your website platform aren't going to go as deep as if you put an app or a program, a tool, as you say there, on additionally. So the most commonly used one is Google Analytics 4, which is the newer version of Google Analytics, or GA4, which is a free code that you can put on your website that will help you be able to track all of those things. But if you didn't even want to go that far, almost every website platform has something that will show you some of the things that I'm talking about. Google Analytics or GA4 Google Analytics is free. And normally there are some free options within your website platform. And then there are additional tools out there if you really wanted to go further into the data where there is a cost. But there's definitely a lot of really, really good. And I'm not just saying this, I don't know, to make it easy for you guys. Like there's a lot of really good tools. The most commonly used one around the world is a free tool from Google, that Google Analytics tool. And that's the most widely used one. So there's definitely some really good tools that are of no cost. Great question though, Linda.
That's good. We have one here from Rick. He is asking, what's the difference between iHeart versus social media?
Oh yeah, so iHeartMedia it's a music platform and video platform where people receive content, podcast and music content. So that would be just utilizing a slightly different push approach. Usually it's based on what types of audiences you're trying to draw in. So it would be similar to like comparing TV and radio, I guess, right? Like they both have different ways of drawing people in and different calls to actions that you would ask for. So iHeartMedia is one of those platforms that involves music and video and things like that. We also use Spotify, Pandora, different places as well. But yeah, that would be the main difference. There wouldn't be another core difference would be that you're identifying yourself on those platforms. You don't have to have like a business page and profile and things like that, like you need to have on social media.
So I'll ask a follow-up to that, Darren, because it's overwhelming when you think about all of the options on social media. So as far as a ministry goes, is it important to kind of pick a couple that would be like, this is where we're going to focus, or have your presence kind of in some way on all of as many as possible, but really focus on a couple so that we just have some clarity as to where to kind of focus? Is there any way you can share with us on how we identify which platforms we should make sure that our ministry has representation on?
That's a stellar question for sure. I would say that the easiest way to help define and either narrow or widen how many platforms you actually need to be on goes back to that whiteboard session with your team on audiences, right? So like it's who are your audiences that we're trying to serve and or reach, and then determining where they spend their time. So we do a lot of research on that to look at, if it's a younger audience and we're trying to engage for a fitness company or something like that, TikTok and Snapchat, those types of places are going to be the answer because it's super engaging, fun videos, fast paced, that kind of environment. For most ministries, at the core is going to be the Meta or Facebook family of apps. So like Facebook and Instagram are probably going to be the most common two. But yeah, that it all comes down to the audiences. So once you have those audiences defined, then you can look at where do those audiences spend their time, and then that's where you should spend your time creating content.
Mm-hmm.
And to add to that is not to overlook all of my friends in ministry. Don't overlook your email database, because that is a key. Maybe you can speak to that, Darren, as far as the importance of continually growing and connecting with your email database.
Yeah, I mean that's something that we should always be a call to action and something that you're focused on growing, especially if you are a ministry that has a need for support and things like that financially, because people might be in one place today that they're in a different place financially a year from now or 6 months from now, that allows them to support in different ways and things like that. So I always would be recommending have a call to action of, hey, how can you subscribe to our email list so that they're getting updates and things like that. So yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. There is, okay. I'll say really quick too, for those of us that have a LinkedIn profile, if you're trying to think through how do I even start my email list, there is a way that you can go into LinkedIn and actually export into a spreadsheet your LinkedIn contacts with their email address, if those contacts that you're connected with on LinkedIn have given LinkedIn permission to share your email address with contacts. So that can be a great way to start off and say, hey, well, I have 1,500 contacts on LinkedIn. Let me export the list, and you might end up with.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great way to start that email list, and then make sure, technically to follow protocol, I should say, that the initial email you send them should tell them, you're connected with me on LinkedIn. This is my organization. we'd love it if you kept on following along, but if you don't, you can unsubscribe at the bottom of this email. Just as a disclaimer.
Okay, so this one's a good one too. Linda asks, where can we find the information regarding the Google grant that Darren shared?
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
so if you want to drop in the comments, just drop my Cash App. You guys can send me $3,000 each, and I will send. No, I'm just kidding. So all you have to do is you just go on Google and type in Google for nonprofits. So the ad program is just one part of the program, you guys. If you are a 501c3, there's actually a lot of tools out there that ministries and nonprofits just aren't aware of that exist. So you literally go on Google, type in Google for nonprofits. It's own program, but you can log in with any Gmail account. So if you don't have a Gmail account, you should probably set one up. But you can set up your own Google for nonprofits profile. And then from there, there'll be a set of tools that are listed out right in front of you of which ones you want to apply for. Usually you have to upload like a copy of your IRS determination letter showing that you are in fact a valid 501c3. But within that program, you guys, there's things like, how many of us out there for our ministry, want to have your name at your ministry domain. So Darren at elevationteam.org instead of just Darren elevation at Gmail, right? So thinking through different things like that even Google can help provide that at no cost. So you can have a bunch of professional email addresses that are set up, which sounds like maybe not that big of a deal. If you're a church or a ministry that has 15, 20 email addresses and you're paying, GoDaddy $6 per one, that's would be 6 times, we'll say, or 10 times, $60. Well, that's $720 a year you just saved by setting up your email addresses through this Google for Nonprofits program instead of using GoDaddy for email addresses. So there's tons of technology tools like that. There's a YouTube program, there's Google Places program, all within the Google family for the Google for Nonprofits program, and the ads piece is one of those. Another great one to look into is Office 365 from Microsoft. If you're looking to set up a calendar tool, Outlook, email addresses, and other technology features, as well as cloud storage, they have a great program for nonprofits. And there's a couple of other ones like that where you can receive technology for free. You can apply for laptops. There's all sorts of things like that out there that are very user-friendly and easy to apply for, as long as you have that 501c3 status. And a lot of organizations just you haven't looked into them. And so it's like, how do we know that these exist? Well, hey, I'm here to tell you about them so that you guys can get out there and get those free resources for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you, Linda, for adding about Canva. That is a great graphic design program. Mm-hmm. I did not know that they give a premium subscription for free for nonprofits. That's really great. And I do see this question here from Dan Hall, which is a great question. Can we use IMF's nonprofit for Google specials? And the short answer is I don't know. I think because IMF is actually going to be doing some of these Google programs ourselves, I'm thinking probably not. But Erica, let's make a note of that, and we can double back with Dan as we find out for sure one way or the other on that. Or Darren, do you know?
I don't know, just because we'd have to see the type of paperwork that's sent out to everybody that utilizes the nonprofit status for IMF. So that could be something that, depending on how it's set up, may or may not be able to be adjusted, where then any ministry that is underneath and covered under the umbrella of IMF could potentially use its own IMF or its own Google for Nonprofits program as like a chapter. Would be the way that Google would define it. So I can even help walk IMF through that process of seeing if there's some ways that we can make it so that the official paperwork we send out to IMF members, if they qualify, where they'd be able to use the program on their own. That's something that we can totally work on together for sure.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan, for that question.
It's a really good question.
Always want to know how we can serve. Well, we could keep going on here all day with questions. I know that we want to be mindful of your time. So thank you so much to all of you who joined us. And if you're watching the replay, thanks for taking time to watch the replay. And mark your calendars again for Tuesday, February 6th from 1 to 2 p.m. Central Time. we'll be getting information out to you, but we're hosting a Digital Basics 101 Part 2, and we'll cover some stuff about promoting and connecting with people during the Easter season on that one as well. And thanks to our guest, Darren, for being our presenter today, Darren Johnson. And Erica, why don't you read off his email and website again for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So Darren is available via email at darren@elevation.org.
Elevationteam.org.
Elevationteam.org. Sorry, let me correct that. And then as well as Elevation Team's website, you can reach them at elevationteam.org as well.
That's awesome. A little trick on Zoom, you may or may not know. If you go on the chat, there's 3 little dots next to the emoji and all that. If you click on those 3 little dots, it comes up, you can save the chat, and that'll just go to your desktop, and you'll be able to have that contact information and everything that's been put in the chat available to you. So that's how you could save it. And with that, I'm just going to pray a blessing over everyone. Lord, thanks for everyone on this call. Thanks for Darren and his wealth of information and inspiration. Now help us, Lord, to apply even one thing that we learned today, and help us, Lord, to be even more effective in reaching those that we're called to reach. And thank you for all those that are serving those that we can serve today. And we just speak blessing over them in Jesus' name. Amen. Erica, was this fun or what?
Oh, this is so good. It was so good to put some of your faces to names here. Thank you all for joining. This is an incredible journey. I pray that you got, at least like Bill said, at least one thing out of this and are able to learn and grow, because like I mentioned, the digital age, we're in it, it's happening, and we can reach people for Jesus through this.
That's right. Hey, if you're able, put one thing you're going to take away in the chat before you sign off. If you're able, what's one thing? And as you sign off, thanks for being here. Darren's going to hang in the room here for just a couple moments. If you have a question that comes to your mind, you're welcome to do that. But otherwise, bless you and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, guys.